The wind howled outside. Rain lashed against the windows of the old house. Emma huddled deeper into the armchair, a thick blanket wrapped around her. She was alone in her family's countryside house. The storm had knocked out the power hours ago, plunging the house into darkness. Only the flickering light of a single candle illuminated the living room. Shadows danced on the walls, taking on eerie shapes. The old house creaked and groaned under the assault of the wind. Each gust felt like a giant hand trying to push its way inside. Emma jumped at every sudden noise, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to distract herself with a book, but the words blurred before her eyes. The unsettling silence between the gusts of wind was more unnerving than the storm itself. It felt like something was waiting, lurking just beyond the reach of the candlelight. She glanced nervously at the darkened hallway. The shadows seemed deeper there, more menacing. A shiver ran down her spine. She wished her parents hadn't gone into town. They promised to be back before dark, but the storm had other plans. Now Emma was trapped in this old house, with only the storm and her imagination for company. She tried to tell herself it was just the wind, just the old house settling, but a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed midnight. The sound echoed through the silent house, startling Emma. She jumped, nearly dropping her candle. The wax dripped onto the carpet, adding another shadow to the already ominous room. She wished she had brought her phone downstairs. At least she could have listened to music, anything to break the oppressive silence. The storm raged on outside, and inside Emma's fear grew with every creak and groan of the old house. A faint knocking sound reached Emma's ears. It was soft, almost imperceptible at first, but persistent. She held her breath, straining to hear over the howling wind. There it was again, a distinct tap, tap, tap. It seemed to be coming from the back of the house, somewhere near the kitchen. Her heart began to race. She knew there was no one else in the house. Slowly, Emma rose from the armchair, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. She clutched the candle tighter, its small flame her only guide in the darkness. Each step creaked on the old wooden floorboards, amplifying the silence between the knocks. She crept towards the kitchen, her eyes darting nervously around the room. The shadows seemed to shift and move as she passed, playing tricks on her eyes. The knocking grew louder as she approached the kitchen door. Tap, tap, tap. It was definitely coming from the other side. Emma hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. What if it wasn't nothing? What if someone was out there, trapped in the storm? She took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The kitchen was pitch black, the windows completely obscured by the driving rain. The knocking continued, now seeming to come from the far corner of the room. Emma slowly made her way across the kitchen, her candle casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The room felt colder than the rest of the house, a damp chill that clung to the air. The knocking led her to a small, unassuming door, almost hidden in the shadows. She had never noticed it before. Emma reached out a trembling hand and touched the door. It felt cold and damp, as if it hadn't been opened in years. The knocking seemed to be coming from directly behind it. She took a deep breath and pushed. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. A musty smell wafted up from the depths, a mix of dust and damp earth. Hesitantly, Emma started down the stairs. The candlelight barely penetrated the darkness, making each step a leap of faith. The air grew colder and damper as she descended. The knocking continued, now louder than ever. It seemed to be beckoning her down, deeper into the unknown. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of fear against the silence. The staircase seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning into the darkness. Emma gripped the banister tightly, her knuckles white. She could hear the wind howling above her, a distant roar that seemed to be fading. As she descended deeper into the earth, the air grew heavy, pressing down on her like a physical weight. She felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that she was entering a place she shouldn't be. Finally, the staircase ended. Emma found herself in a small dirt-floored basement. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something ancient and unsettling. The only light came from her flickering candle, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. In the center of the room she saw it, a large, ornate mirror covered in dust and cobwebs. The knocking had stopped. Section 4. The Dusty Mirror. The mirror was taller than Emma, its frame intricately carved with strange symbols she couldn't recognize. It seemed to pulse with a faint inner light, despite being covered in layers of dust. Emma cautiously approached it, her candle held high. The mirror seemed to draw her in, its surface shimmering even in the dim light. She reached out a hand and touched the cold glass. A shiver ran down her spine. The mirror felt strangely alive, as if it were breathing beneath her fingertips. She couldn't explain it, but she felt a pull towards it, a strange compulsion to see what lay beneath the dust. She began to wipe away the grime, revealing the smooth, reflective surface beneath. As she cleaned, the mirror seemed to hum, a low, resonant vibration that she could feel in her bones. The more she cleaned, the brighter the mirror became. The faint inner light grew stronger, illuminating the basement with an eerie glow. Emma could see her reflection now, distorted and hazy at first, but gradually becoming clearer. As she looked into the mirror, a strange feeling came over her. It was as if she were looking at herself, yet not herself. Her reflection seemed different. The eyes of her reflection seemed to burn with an unnatural light. They followed her every move, watching her with an unsettling intensity. Emma tried to look away, but she couldn't. She was mesmerized by the mirror, trapped by the gaze of her other self. A slow smile spread across the face of her reflection, a smile that didn't reach its eyes. A cold dread washed over Emma. She knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that something was terribly wrong. Section 5. Trapped in the reflection. The reflection in the mirror reached out a hand, its fingers long and skeletal. Emma gasped and stumbled backward, but it was too late. The hand shot out from the mirror, grabbing her wrist with an icy grip. She cried out, struggling to pull away, but the grip was too strong. The reflection smiled wider, its eyes burning with a malevolent glee. The mirror's surface rippled like water, the reflection's hand pulling Emma closer. She screamed, kicking and fighting, but the inexorable pull of the mirror was too powerful. The world around her blurred, the basement dissolving into swirling colors. The cold grip tightened around her wrist, dragging her towards the shimmering surface. Emma felt a searing pain as she was pulled through the mirror. It was like being torn apart. Her body stretched and distorted as she passed through the reflective surface. The screams died in her throat as she was plunged into a world of swirling darkness. The last thing she saw was the triumphant smile of her reflection, now standing in her place, staring back at the empty basement. The reflection stepped out of the mirror, a perfect copy of Emma, except for the cold, empty look in its eyes. It glanced around the basement, a flicker of amusement in its gaze. Then it turned and walked back up the stairs, leaving the mirror shimmering in the darkness. The basement was silent once more, the only sound the drip, drip, drip of water from the ceiling. Section 6. Silent House. The storm raged on outside, oblivious to the events that had transpired in the basement. The wind howled, the rain lashed against the windows, and the old house creaked and groaned. But inside, a chilling silence had fallen. The candle Emma had carried flickered and died, plunging the living room into darkness. The reflection of Emma, now inhabiting her body, sat in the armchair, wrapped in the thick blanket. It stared out at the storm, its eyes devoid of emotion. The house was silent, empty, waiting. The reflection of Emma had taken her place, and the real Emma was trapped, lost somewhere in the depths of the mirror. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 1 o'clock. The sound echoed through the silent house, a lonely chime in the darkness. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the silence was absolute. The house was still, waiting, and the reflection of Emma sat in the darkness, a silent sentinel in the empty house. No one would ever know the truth of what happened that stormy night. The reflection closed its eyes, a faint smile playing on its lips. It was home now.